You're listening to The Tales We Tell, a podcast about spooky stories, unsolved mysteries, and local lore. I'm your host, Hannah Parch.
And I'm Katy.
Welcome back!
So funny how you switched to like podcast voice, but you only use podcast voice for the intro.
I know.
It's like that easy listening, like, talk radio of like the
voice.
90s. Yeah,
Yep.
NPR voice.
Yeah, at work, they make fun of me for my phone voice. Because it's my friendly customer service voice. Because I answer the phone, this is Hannah.
Much more chipper than I feel.
Yeah, because I'm not going to be like, what? What do you want?
Which is what I really want to say when people call me.
Yeah, I mean, I have caller ID, so like usually I know. And there's hardly anyone who calls me that I'm like, what? Unless they've called me like 4 times already.
When I was working, I hated answer the phone because 90% of the time, the other end of the line, it was someone crazy. And I'm like, that's not what we do here. I can't help you with that. Call to EQ. I have no idea what you're talking about.
You got the public.
Called. I had the general public.
Yeah. I almost never get those
random
phone calls,
people.
which is nice.
And then I think one good thing about COVID was, I didn't have to be in the office, therefore
Nice.
the phone was not, I didn't have to deal with the phone. But then after, even when I went back to the office, I just stopped answering the phone.
Nice.
Just email me.
Just let it ring.
Just email me. Because it also turned out, like, when I went back, 50% of the calls was, like, at least 50% was spam.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm just like, screw this. I'm not answering the phone. Unless it says, the area code that we're in, I didn't answer the phone.
Yeah. It's called voicemail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we have to rattle our drinks real quick.
Yeah.
What are we drinking?
Hell if I know. No, it's a infused vodka lemonade spritz thingy. So I think the infusion is citrus splash.
It's delicious. It's very refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
Which, is it cool outside today?
It is.
Okay. I haven't been outside.
I think the high is like 71 today. Yeah, no, it's a little packet of, herbs. Basically, it's like vodka tea.
Nice.
So yeah, you pour the different, like there's lemongrass, some like lime leaves, and other plants that you just let it steep in the vodka or rum or gin or whatever, and then you strain it out and you mix it with other things to make your nice cocktail. So this is just an infused vodka with some lemonade and some club soda. It's supposed to be, like they have, suggested drink recipes for the blends, and it's supposed to be with sparkling lemonade, but
where do you even get that?
Yeah.
Come on. We're not fancy.
So I'm like, I'm going to get lemonade and club soda, and we're calling it a
We're
day.
going to call it that. Yeah. Same thing. It's weird. This is like the 3rd day in a row that we've seen each other.
Almost. Because we didn't see each other Friday, but
Oh,
we saw
that's
each
right.
other
We saw each
Thursday.
other Thursday. That's right. I know. Katie and I went
3 out of the 4 days.
I know. We went on a little friend date with Critter, which
had
was
a
like
blast.
the funnest thing in the world. Mostly for me. Katie was... We were just talking.
A little frazzled.
Katie was a little frazzled with Critter's antics, which I found hilarious.
Which I am... That makes me happy and relieved. I'm like, well, as long as you weren't, like, irritated because I couldn't carry on, like, a full dedicated conversation. I feel like we still did pretty well.
Yeah, we
all
did.
Things considered.
Yeah, I feel like we did. But he's in that cute little throwing phase, which I'm sure is so frustrating. But,
Everything on the floor.
But is just the cutest thing. And mostly he's just got that straight face down. He really convinces you that he's going to take it and keep it this time, or eat the thing, or play with the thing.
He's
or
like,
drink.
oh, a piece of bread. You're right, Mom. I do like bread. And he just stares you dead in the eye while throwing it off behind his shoulder.
Or he'll like earnestly ask for something, like he's gonna die if you don't give it to him.
Nah. It's point and nah.
And then you finally give it to him, and then he just flings it to the side. Like a little king who's not satisfied.
And then you just sit there completely defeated, like, what do you want?
Oh, it's
sometimes I love him, but he sometimes just drives me absolutely batshit banana town.
But then he was very happy and amused when we got the milk, once he figured out what was in the mysteriously closed up container that you were trying to make him drink out of. Rightfully suspicious of you.
I mean, he drinks out of, hidden
opaque
containers with straws all the time. He's like, well, this is new. He's never had a styrofoam to-go cup with lid and straw.
Yeah, he didn't trust that shit.
And so I was like, okay, well, because he was just like chewing on the straw and like messing with the lid. And I'm like, no, drink. You know how to drink out of a straw. So I had to like put my finger on the straw to trap the milk in there, pull the straw up,
try to dropper it into his mouth.
To put it in his mouth so he would, then be like, oh, look,
Didn't
milk.
He spit that out on you?
No, he moved my hand he hit the straw and it forced my finger off of the top of the straw so all of the milk that was collected in there poured out onto my lap. He did spit some milk on me later on.
Because he did that cute thing where he would suck it in.
And then be a fountain.
And then just the cutest. Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
And then there was the lime.
The lime. Watching babies eat citrus is just always...
Well, because he doesn't hate it.
Yeah.
He likes it.
Yeah. And then he realized
And then he goes back for more.
And then he realized that we thought it was funny.
Oh, yeah, and then he started putting on a show.
He started laughing, which was really cute. Mm-hmm. And I think that's when the waitress came over. Or maybe she came over when he was, like, trying to chew the styrofoam while he was drinking out of... I don't know.
It was funny looking at the teeth marks later. I was like, ooh, this looks like something out of Jurassic Park.
She came over to check on us one time, and I just couldn't stop laughing. And I was like, we're good. It's fine.
You were amused.
Bring the check. I don't know what we're doing.
It was Critter's first dinner out.
Really?
Actually, yeah.
Aw.
Because I don't think we've ever... Like, we've gone out for lunch or something every now and then with him. But this was the first time he's gone out to dinner. And I was solo. It's a whole lot easier when it's me and Shelton.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well. And I feel like Critter likes me now because the last few times he's been in a very, like, only mom mood. And this time he at least was like, hey, Aunt Hannah's kind of cool.
It takes him a hot minute to warm up kind of a thing. And, like, also once you gave him some of your waffle, he was like,
the waffle was...
You're trustworthy now.
Yeah. Okay, well, I have a few announcements. The first one, in regards to last week's episode, because it was so long, I also realized that we didn't get to get into some stuff about the episode. So I wanted to, like, I guess apologize that we didn't talk about, like, things that I realized afterwards. Like, the fact that the one guy smelled gas in the church, like, I never addressed that again, and I don't think I realized why there was gas in the church.
That did bug me at the time, but then...
like, an hour later, we forgot about it. We didn't really talk about motive. We didn't talk about, like, how he was able to get to the church social, like, without being covered in blood.
Yep.
Anyways, I feel like we might do, like a mini go back and cover some of that stuff.
We need to do, like, a review.
Yeah, where we just go back and talk about some stuff, because I feel like that was a really good episode, but I also feel like if it was any longer, people would have just pieced out, and also we would have passed out. So, anyways, we'll do a follow-up on that sometime.
We'll do, like, the director's commentary thing.
Yeah.
We'll go back, re-listen to the episode, make some notes, and...
we'll listen to it on two times speed, and then make some notes. Yeah. My second announcement is just a thank you to our listeners. I think I was just feeling in my feelings this week. I don't know. Thanks for sticking around and for still listening to us. If you are... I mean, you are if you're hearing this. I don't know. Whatever. I'm feeling grateful this week. Which leads to my third announcement, which is a mental health check-in, because I feel like we haven't done one of those in a hot second. Also, I have not been having a good mental health week, so I thought it might be a good time to remind everyone to check in with yourselves, check in with someone. I don't know. If you don't, I don't know. How do we talk about this normally?
I don't know. Check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself. I don't know. If you haven't talked to anyone about your mental health, talk to someone. Whether it is a friend, family member.
Hell, even talk to your dog.
oh, I thought you were going to say doctor. I was like, doctor? Yes.
Talk to your dog. Just get it out of you.
Yeah.
Like, even if no one is there to listen except for your goldfish, talk to them, because sometimes verbally, like saying things out loud, by verbally processing, it helps you have a better understanding.
Yeah.
And you might come away with like, actually, you know what? Things aren't quite as bad as I originally thought and felt. Just kind of getting those thoughts out helps you organize how you actually feel about them. Or it might also help you realize, wow, I should probably talk to somebody other than my pet.
Yeah.
Also, maybe my hamster.
Maybe a different pet. Also, I think sometimes when you talk to, even if you're just like mentioning that you are having these feelings, like for me, it's anxiety. Sometimes even if you just mention to people that you're having these feelings or that you're going through something like this, you'll find that like people don't know, or that people also are experiencing that. Like, and I had like the reverse situation. I found out that a friend of mine has anxiety and I didn't know. And I was able to be like, I can totally relate to what you're going through. And like, I don't want you to feel alone. And like, I can relate. And like, these are some things that have helped me. And like, I was with a group of people at the time. One girl was like, please call me next time, like to this other person. They were like, please call me next time that happens. Please don't ever feel like you have to be alone in experiencing that. Like if you're going through something. And
Did Jarek tell you about the car ride up yesterday?
No.
It was a fun little group therapy for people with ADHD.
Oh.
And I actually mentioned to Maddie too. I'm like, oh, Jarek's coming with us. Mm-hmm. He also has ADHD.
Oh, nice.
Our car might actually explode. But no, it was just a whole almost 30 minutes of just sharing and relating experience of like, oh, well, do you guys also do this? Like, this is something that I feel like, I don't know, is this normal for me, like for all people?
Yeah.
Or is this normal for neurodivergence? Or am I just really, really weird and no one does this?
Is this a Katy thing, or is this something we all do?
So that was a fun conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like we actually had closer to an hour's worth of conversation just because we all talk so fast.
Nice.
It was like, well, blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah, no, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I love that. Mm-hmm. But yeah. Anyways. Also, and if you're new here and you don't feel like you have anyone that you can talk to about stuff, send us a message because we'll listen and talk to you. I always want people to feel like they...
Hannah's the anxious one. I am the neurodivergent. I'm the ADHD. Yep. But I have, a little touch of depression and anxiety because of 30 plus years of untreated, undiagnosed ADHD.
Yep. So, and I've got the depression because of the anxiety. Yep. So, and we've both have experience with various medications and trauma and, so, and therapy and, like all different levels of that. And so, yeah, if you feel like you don't have anyone to talk to, or I don't know, just if you want to send us a message, please do.
I feel like I have the same relationship with therapy that Critter has with limes. It's complicated.
It's complicated.
And it's really sour and you don't like biting into it. But then after you're a little happy and laugh. But then the thought of biting into it again and remembering how sour and miserable it was makes you not want to do it again. Yeah. But you do it and then it's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got therapy this week and I'm both happy that it's happening because I've got a lot of stuff, like all of this anxiety that that has happened. And then I'm also like, oh, but I don't want to go, like, I just want to move past it and I don't want to have to, like, dig back into that. But then I'm like, oh, but I know I'll feel better afterwards and, like, I should let her know everything. So, I don't know. Okay. And that's it. Unless you have any other announcements. You ready for... I'm excited about this episode because it's a topic we've never covered before. And I'm going to give a special shout out to my main source, which is Ancient Origins Magazine, issue 25, which came out in 2020, which had an article in it that brought this story to my attention. And I'm just going to dive right in.
Do it.
Okay. And I did look up pronunciations on this one because I wasn't sure that you'd be able to help me.
Probably not.
No offense. It's just not your geographical area of expertise, to my knowledge.
Probably not.
Okay. So Deir el-Bahari is otherwise known as the Monastery of the North, is a complex of mortuary temples in the necropolis of Thebes. So we are in Egypt.
Did you say necropolis?
Necropolis?
Huh. I don't know if I've ever heard that word.
Is that not how you say that word?
I've heard acropolis.
Oh, necropolis.
Yeah,
with an N. Yeah.
I've never heard that word, I don't think.
Okay. Well, that's definitely the word.
I believe you.
Okay. And I did look up the pronunciation of Deir el-Bahari. So it is located on the west bank of the Nile, and it includes 3 funerary temples spanning from 1970 BCE, so not the most recent 1970, to 1435 BCE. And it also includes the site of 2 mummy caches.
Cool.
I think I'm saying that word right.
Yes.
Okay, cache.
I have heard that word before.
Haha. In the 21st century, sorry, not the 21st century, that's incorrect. And the 21st dynasty of the New Kingdom, which was was between 1077 and 943 BC. Sorry, the BCs confused the hell out of me. I wrote them down, whatever. So, a long time ago, 21st dynasty, people were already beginning to start to loot pharaoh tombs. So, like, pharaoh tomb looting is not a new thing. People were doing it long ago. And so in response to this, priests began excavating various 18th and 19th dynasty leaders' bodies and moving them into caches for safekeeping. Okay. So they basically just excavated a bunch of pharaohs and moved them all into one place to keep them safe. And there were at least 2 of these, and they were discovered by archaeologists in 1875. Here is where we will take a brief detour, and I'm going to tell you about Egyptian mummification in general, which I was actually very excited about this part.
I loved learning about anything Egyptian related, especially the Egyptian mythology is not my favorite of mythologies, but I do love it, and anything about ancient Egypt just fascinated me. And just also, how some of the impressive, engineering and other, architectural, just some of the technology that existed during this time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it feels like there was a long history of ancient Egypt. There's a long history of this civilization that just never advanced. And then you think about, from Industrial Revolution to now, it's just explosive and how advanced technology has become. So anyway, I digress.
I know. After this, I feel like I'm going up to see my parents in a couple weeks, and they live in Raleigh. And I feel like while I'm up there, I'm going to go back to the Museum of Art. They don't have, a specific, Egypt display, but they have a Egypt section in their permanent collection. I was always way more interested in, the Baroque and the European arts, whatever, because I'm very traditional. But, now, I might go just check out the Egyptian arts section. Okay, so most of this information about the process of mummification came from either the Smithsonian or historymuseum.ca. So if you have problems with what I'm saying, take it up with them.
Call Canada.
Yeah. All right, so mummification was super expensive. So usually only pharaohs or officials or members of nobility were mummified. For ancient Egyptians, mummification was really important because they believed that you needed your body for the afterlife, and so therefore you needed your body to be preserved. In general, the mummification process took about 70 days, and it is performed by special priests. So first things first, we remove your brain through your nose with a hook. And so we do this, they are doing this.
Don't they superheat the hook and then stick it up there and kind of swirl it around and...
Oh, I don't know. I didn't read that part. Do they?
I don't know. I can't remember. I feel like I've read that before, but I could be wrong.
Okay. Well, the reason they used the hook is because they didn't want to disfigure the head or the face or whatever. And then what tissue they couldn't get with the hook, they would just put like chemicals up there to dissolve the rest of it. And then often they would pour resin into your empty skull cavity. And I think they would do that through your nasal passages. So then they would remove your organs, and they would do this through an incision made on the left side of your abdomen. The body cavity would then be washed and filled with, quote, pure crushed myrrh, cassia, and all other aromatic substances except for frankincense. No frankincense. I have no idea why. It just said no frankincense. They would leave the heart in the body because they believed the heart was the source of intelligence. And then your organs that they took out would usually be preserved, and then they would either be separately placed in their own boxes or jars, which were called canopic jars, which would be buried alongside the body, or in later practices, they would be preserved and then wrapped and put back into your body. So, yeah. Next, the body was covered in natron. I always look at Katy when I'm saying a word that I'm not 100% sure. I did look up a lot of pronunciations in here. This is a compound of sodium carbonate and sodium bicarbonate. They would take natron packets and place them inside the body, and then they would also like just cover the body in it. And this is to remove all the moisture.
I'm guessing it was crushed up shells, like mollusks and
probably
because that's the sodium bicarbonate there.
Sure. I don't know. It's sand. I have no idea.
Sand is quartz.
I don't know. Anyways, they'd leave it like that for 35 to 40 days until it was completely dried out. And then they'd like dig it back out. And then if there were any sunken in features, they would fill those back in nicely.
Wouldn't they stuff it with cotton?
Linen.
Linen, that was it.
Yep. So they'd just, fill you out nicely, like a funeral, not a funeral director, but a
cosmetologist, but funeral cosmetologist.
I want to say an embalmer.
Yeah.
Is that what an embalmer did? Whatever. Yeah. And then they would add false eyes, so you look nice and alive. And then the body would then be wrapped in hundreds of yards of linen. So amulets would often be added among the wrappings for protection. And there would often be prayers or inscriptions written on the linen strips, also for protection. The body would be coated with warm resin and then wrapped in more linen. So just like
layers.
Tons and tons and tons of linen. And then finally, a shroud would be wrapped around the body. So once the body is prepared, while the body's being prepared, the tomb was also being prepared. So like by the time the body's prepared, the tomb better be ready.
Yeah, because they got to load it up with all their their money,
stuff.
their possessions, everything that they're going to need for the afterlife.
Yes. Furniture, statuettes, paintings, all this stuff. And they believed that all of these things, like the statuettes and paintings, things that were symbols of like real things, those would all become real in the afterlife. So like if they had paintings of food, that would become real food in the afterlife. Once the
definitely want a statue of my dog.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes they would.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we're not going to talk about that. So once the body and the tomb were prepared, priests would perform a funeral that included various religious rites. They would touch various parts of the deceased's body to indicate their use in the afterlife. For example, touching the mouth would indicate that they could then eat and speak in the afterlife. So if you want to be a dick, you could just skip that part and then be like, eh.
I wonder if, a deaf or a blind person, if the priest was like, oh, let me touch your eyes or your ears so that they'll work in the afterlife, even though they didn't work in this life.
That'd be nice. I hope so.
That would be interesting.
So then the body was placed in a coffin, and usually they would include the Book of the Dead, which was a text of prayers and spells meant to assist them in their journey through the underworld into the afterlife. And then the tomb was sealed. And then that's it.
There was also curses placed on them too.
Probably.
To prevent from grave robbing.
And then grave robbers would come and, Indiana Jones would do his thing. Okay, so back at Deir el-Bahari. So they've discovered these caches, and inside, there are several pharaohs that they identified. These include, here comes my pronunciations, Amahotep, 1 and 3, Tutmos, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, sorry, 1, 2, 3, and 4, Ramses, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6, sorry. All of them, all the Ramses are in there. Seti the First, and then Merneptah. You know, Merneptah, the most famous of all the pharaohs.
Sure.
And then there were also several unidentified mummies. There's also a bunch of, like, other nobility that are in there. There's, like, wives of pharaohs and, like, I don't know, officials and daughters and whatever. But then there's also some unidentified mummies that they couldn't identify. And one of those they called Unknown Man E, because they just started lettering them, I guess. So he was discovered in an uninscribed coffin in 1881 by Emile Bruges. And he was approximately 18 when he died. And there are several things that stood out about him immediately upon his examination by physicians and chemists in 1886. I don't know why it took them 5 years to examine him, but it did.
Well, they had a cache of...
It's true. And also, apparently, I didn't read super into this, but apparently Emile Bruges did a real job of, like, excavating this cache. Like, he just, like, in a day, just, like, took out as much as he could and, like, didn't document any of it, and then, like, wasn't super careful with it, and then just, like, went back and was, like, trying to document it by memory, and, like, probably damaged a bunch of it when he... Yeah, and they were just like, oh, Emile, that's not how you do things.
Cringeworthy to look back on now that we know better, and it might have been that, he did know better, but didn't do better.
Yeah.
But also they might not have known better back then.
Yeah.
And, unfortunate no matter what.
Yeah. Well, you can look at your first 2 pictures, actually.
Hey, I forgot there was a dossier. I get to see mummies.
You get to see some dead people. So this is the casket that he was found in, which was uninscribed.
Mm-hmm. It looks very not fancy either.
Yes, very simple. And then that's just a close-up of his face, and then the second page is just a full body shot of Unknown Man E. Okay, so here are the things that stood out. The first was his facial expression. Mm-hmm. Quote, his mouth wide open, his eyes closed, nostrils flared, apparently screaming.
Yeah. I was going to make a comment about his facial expression.
Yeah.
That it does look like he's screaming, but also with the whole decomp and preservation process, like, skin dries up and gets tight. And it can, just pull in, because it's tightening, can be pulled in certain directions to make it look like.
Katy's jumping ahead like 10 points.
It also, his eyes look like they're scrunched up too.
Yeah, they do.
They're probably just sewn shut.
Yeah. Well, they did nickname him the Screaming Man because of this.
Mm-hmm. I'll get behind it.
Yeah. He also apparently smelled really bad. They said, like, as soon as they opened him up, that he just smelled awful.
I guess he did not get the myrrh and other
He did not, yeah. Didn't get
or
that.
Definitely not the
Definitely
frankincense.
not the frankincense, for sure. His body was wrapped in a goat skin, which was very strange because that would have been ritually impure in Egyptian cultures, and that would have prevented his soul from entering into the afterlife.
Okay, well, I was going to make a guess. I'm like, well, maybe he was a bad dude, and that's why he didn't get, the myrrh.
Yeah, yeah.
And the goat skin, like, maybe he was a bad dude, and instead of just being, like, dumped in the Nile or something,
right,
to be eaten by crocodiles, they wanted to punish him even in the afterlife. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, we're going to ensure that you get an afterlife, but it sucks. Right. But if apparently the goat skin prevents the afterlife, then there goes my theory.
Yeah. But then also, part of this whole thing is, like, there's all these things, but then it's like, well, why was he even mummified?
Yeah.
It's like, why go through all of these things? Which,
yeah. Because the mummification is to preserve them for the afterlife specifically.
Yeah.
But if you also want to prevent the afterlife, it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. There were no amulets. There were no, like, figurines, which those are called shapti, which I should have mentioned in the first part. He was also bound at the wrists and ankles. They also found, quote, compressed skin folds and wrinkles around his neck, as well as an inflated chest.
I thought his ribs looked weird.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, his chest is inflated, which we will get into some of that a little later. His body was covered in a thick white paste, which turned out to be a calcium oxide, which is quicklime, which was not used in any other Egyptian mummies. Also, it appeared, on first examination, he appeared to have all of his organs still intact and inside of his body. There was no incision to indicate that they had ever been touched or removed. His stomach was, quote, pulled into the shape of a boat, which I don't know what that means. And this is according to Gaston Maspero, who was the head of Antiquities Service, who, like, was part of the group that examined him. And he believed that this was an indication of poisoning. Further investigation also found that none of his bones had been broken, which would have been highly unusual because most mummies sustained some kind of bone fracture during the handling and embalming process, especially when they had, even just with handling, but especially when they had
rigor mortis.
Well,
see, that's what I'm thinking. If them trying to work out the rigor mortis would probably potentially result in a broken or fractured bone.
Yeah. Well, one of the really common things was when they used the hook to remove their brains, they almost always sustained some kind of nasal fractures from that. And Unknown Man E didn't have any, his nasal passages were,
Meanwhile, the rest of everything was a real ratchet job.
Yeah,
so you would expect, obviously they're not handling him well, but...
Yeah. And they also found that resin had been poured down his throat. Remember before I said that they would pour resin into the skull, which they didn't clarify that it was through the nasal passages, but I was like, how else are you going to get it in there? And, your throat doesn't lead to your brain. So I was like, I don't know why they're pouring resin down his throat. So the fact that these seemingly vital parts of the mummification process were skipped or deliberately withheld or changed would seem to indicate that this person was revered enough to be mummified, but
hated enough to be given a
job. Had done something shameful or whatever. And there were some indications that he was a man of prominence. So he was found with gold earrings, and there were staffs found in his coffin, which indicated a high-ranking position. And then the fact, again, that he was mummified at all and found entombed among pharaohs. So
maybe he was a pharaoh's son, but he was a total twat.
Maybe.
And so they're like, well, we have to mummify him. But let's not go to any real trouble over it.
So one theory was that he was a foreign official of some kind and that these were foreign burial customs. Apparently, there were some aspects of the burial that were not uncommon in parts of Near Eastern cultures, particularly the sheepskin. And
I thought it was goat
skin. Sorry, the skin of some kind of goat or sheep. Obviously, Near Eastern culture is too broad of a statement for me to figure out which culture and which custom and of which time.
Has anyone done any kind of facial reconstruction of him?
We will get to that in a second.
Okay. Well, I mean, if there's a theory of him being some other, from some other foreign area, then likely his facial structure will be different.
Well, and apparently there's a tale or a story, which I didn't include because it was confusing to me it was confusing when I read it several times, and so I was trying to figure out how to put it in here and not make it confusing. But there's like a tale of I think it was like an Egyptian official or a pharaoh's son or something who like goes off into foreign lands, and his father tells him to come home because he doesn't want him to die away from home and be buried in a sheepskin or a goat skin or something. And I think the implication is in other cultures outside of Egypt, they bury you. In those cultures, they use a goat skin or a sheepskin to bury their dead. At least that was the implication in this article.
Okay.
Another possibility that was raised was that he was an Egyptian official who had died while abroad, and that foreign embalmers had, I guess, buried him in their own traditions, or had someone, I think, tried to point out that like maybe they had tried to follow Egyptian customs but like didn't really get it right.
It's like hearing about mummification from like your cousin's next door neighbor's best friend's uncle.
Yeah.
And then trying to do it themselves.
Yeah, it's like maybe you heard him talk about it some, and so then when he died, you're like, oh, he used to talk about this. We're supposed to preserve his body. Yeah. Wrap him up in linen. Yeah. I don't know.
And like, stuff him with resin.
Cover him and dry him out somehow. And I don't know. Yeah, just pour resin down his throat, I guess. They're like,
do we bind his hands and feet?
How do we keep him in this position? Yeah. They're like, they poured resin down an orifice.
They must tie the pinches together so it's easier to wrap.
Yeah. They're like, they poured resin down an orifice. Which one was it? Later studies did point out what you already said, which is that his haunting expression likely had nothing to do with his death. They were kind of like, yeah, those early examiners kind of let their imaginations run a little wild. And I think they were like, a lot of mummies have been found with this expression. It likely had to do more with poor preservation.
A lot of them, their mouths like peel back and like just, they don't, like that definitely looks much more of a grimace and a scream than some are just like a.
Yeah, like where your lips kind of fade away.
Yeah.
This said it likely had to do with facial tissue settling and then the head falling back, which makes sense. Like if your head falls back and your mouth just stays open.
Your mouth is going to open.
Yeah. And like, I kind of skimmed over it, but like the quote at the beginning was like, his nostrils were flared. I'm like, no,
he doesn't have nostrils.
His nose was gone.
Yeah. I wasn't going to point that out.
Like his nose had decayed. It's fine. In 2012, a DNA analysis was done on him. And this showed that unknown man E shared the Y DNA haplogroup E1B1A, which we're all familiar with Ramesses III, which means that he was the son of the pharaoh.
I guessed that.
Haha.
Well, not that pharaoh. I knew he shared a haplogroup with a pharaoh.
A pharaoh.
Obvi.
My next header is The Plot Thickens. And your next picture is of Ramesses III, as he is now, obviously. I just only included pictures of corpses in here. Yeah.
Awesome.
Also, there was a fun sidebar that I almost included, which I think was of Ramesses the 4th or the 2nd. I should look it up to get it right. But one of them, I think it was the 4th, is the only mummy to ever have a passport, because he had to be taken to France to be like restored or something. And France requires that all people, dead or alive, coming in or out of their country have a passport. And awesome. On his passport, it lists his occupation as Pharaoh, deceased. And it's like literally a picture of his dead face.
That's awesome.
It's great. Okay, so Ramesses III was...
He's a looker.
I know, right? You can actually look up facial reconstructions of him and what he likely looked like in his prime. So he was the second pharaoh of the 20th dynasty in ancient Egypt, which was from 1186 to 1155. And he was largely considered by many to be, quote, the last greatest monarch of the new kingdom to wield any substantial authority over Egypt. And in the spring of 1156, a year before the last year of his reign, although he had recently defeated the Sea Peoples, which I looked up, is literally a term used to describe any various groups of people that come from the sea that could attack Egypt. He had recently defeated the Sea Peoples from invading.
It sounds like a fairy tale.
I know, right? Ramses was regarded by many as being, quote, far removed from the enormous difficulties his subjects faced, such as famine, drought, economic uncertainty. I was thinking, like, Marie Antoinette, if she had also been, like, a military leader. They were like, oh, Ramses eating cake in his palace.
Which she never actually said.
Which she didn't say, of course. Resentment was festering, and eventually assassination plots began to form. And one such plot came from one of Ramses' secondary wives, whose name was T, which is spelled Tiye. And I did look up that pronunciation, T. Ramses III had long since named his oldest son, who was by the great royal wife, Titi, which I didn't look up that pronunciation. Whatever. She doesn't come into play anymore. He had named his oldest son, Prince Ramses IV, as his heir. Which, spoiler alert, if you're a pharaoh and you name your first son, like your name, the fourth, that's going to be your heir. But T very much wanted her son, Pentawar, to be the heir.
Because
obviously. So she wanted him to take her brother and his father's place on the throne. And T apparently had some major influence over the court, and she was able to convince several members of the king's court to join her in her plot, including the head of the treasury, the royal chamberlain, and the army commander, which, hello.
I bet if Ramses IV, when he took over, his plan, T was not going to be taken care of anymore because, why would he?
Why?
And so she was looking out for herself.
Yes, she was.
I mean, this is a tale as old as time. Like,
I know.
Literally.
So,
scheming moms wanting the best for their baby boys.
Yep. So their little group also enlisted the court magician and King Ramses' personal physician. And then T also got the other women in the harem involved, because obviously there was a harem, of which she was part of. And she got them, quote, to spread seditious messages among their relatives beyond the palace gates to, quote, agitate the people and incite conflict in order to foment rebellion against their lord. Which, like, is a pretty good plan. Like, she's like, basically go spread rumors, make everyone hate the king so that when we start this thing, he doesn't have any support outside of the palace also.
I mean, respect, but also not respect.
Yeah.
Like, respect the
hustle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they kind of had too many hands in the pot at this point. Like, you've got so many people in the palace involved in your plan. Everyone's talking about it. Eventually, the wrong person's going to hear about it, which is exactly what happened.
Yep.
And word of their little plot got out. And it's unclear what happened, but somehow Prince Ramses IV foiled the plot. However, what is thought is that the conspirators were able to, like, halfway carry out their plan, and that they were able to mortally wound the king before, like, they sort of got it to happen, but then, like, the prince came in and, like, I don't know, saved the day. And why historians think this is because CT scans on the pharaoh's body show a deep gash in his throat, which had been hidden underneath linen. Which, if you look in that picture, his throat is
like he's
covered.
got a scarf.
Yeah, they're like, oh, we'll just cover this up, and no one will ever look underneath it and see anything. And also a Horus eye amulet had been placed inside that wound, which would have been for healing purposes. So what they think is that probably the group was able to probably cut his throat, not kill him immediately, but he probably did die shortly after that. Anyways, everyone involved in this coup, which was about 40 people total, were all arrested, they were all interrogated, and they were all sentenced for their crime of treason, which was a very big deal. Those that were not sentenced to death had their noses and ears cut off. Very fun. Mm-hmm. For the rest of them, some of them were executed, which was likely by impaling. Eesh. I know. It took me a long time to find that, too. I was, like, looking all over for, like, what was the method of execution in ancient Egypt?
Not nice.
Not very nice. And, like, by impaling, I'm pretty sure it was, like, from the anus upward.
No, that's the Judas cradle, I think.
Oh, really?
The chair.
Well, they talked about sitting on the spear, so...
Well, maybe then.
I was like, well, the way you're saying it makes it sound like... I don't know. And then the people who were, like, higher ranking, they were also sentenced to death, but they were given the opportunity, the gift, if you will, to take their own lives. And we know that Pentawar was given this latter opportunity and took this opportunity. According to an article...
I definitely would have too.
Yeah, I would have too. Yeah, let's not do that.
I'll do me. Y'all stay away.
I'll do that. Thank you. I will definitely figure out something. And according to an article on Live Science, he likely used either poison or hanging or both as his method.
I feel like if he hanged himself, they would be able to figure that out now by looking at x-rays and stuff.
Well, remember in 2012, in 2012, paleopathologist Dr. Albert Zink analyzed the body of the unidentified man E and stated that the compressed skin folds that they had seen around the neck and the inflated chest, although they could have been natural changes that happened post-mortem, they also could have been indications that he was strangled to death.
So hanged himself, but improperly.
Yes. And then also that initial examination of the body in 1886 by Gaston Maspero with the misshapen stomach, he thought indicated poisoning. Mm-hmm. So maybe both. I don't know. The Live Science article also made it sound like it was...
Maybe he tried to poison himself, but it was taking too long, and he was like, maybe it's not working. I'm obviously too strong and tough to be poisoned. I should hang myself. And before he could, like, do it properly, he became incapacitated by the poison and ended up just strangling.
Also, you can, like, poison yourself in it and not die from it.
Yeah.
The Live Science article also kind of indicated that it was a coincidence that he had ended up entombed near his father. And this is a quote from that article. While the dead pharaoh Ramses III was initially buried in a tomb in the Valley of the Kings, his mummy was moved after the robbery of his tomb. Interestingly, his mummy was dumped in the same mummy cache at Deir el-Bahri as Pentawar's. But again, I looked up if you just look up Deir el-Bahri and look at the list of all the mummies they found there, there's, I think, 9 unidentified mummies. And then you look at all the ones they've identified, and they're all either royal or high-ranking or, like, royal adjacent. Mm-hmm. So to me, it seems, very unlikely that they've
done any more DNA testing on any of the unidentifieds, do you know?
I don't know. Okay. Because I feel like they wouldn't be... Because in that list, they've got, like, notes next to, like... They'll have, like, this one we've named, and then they'll have, like, oh, but it's disputed now. And for unidentified man E, they have a note next to it that's like, DNA tests, or like, you know, in 2012, a DNA test showed that, you know, technically he's the son of Ramses III, thought to be Pentower. Whatever.
Pentor?
Yeah, whatever. I don't know.
Anyhow.
Anyways. But it's like, they haven't made it official yet. So, like, he's still officially known as unidentified man E.
Okay.
And so I feel like if they had done DNA tests and found links to any of them...
it'd just be funny to do a DNA test and then, like, upload it to the 23andMe and see who the today's relatives are.
I know. Well, and, like, I wonder, too, if they're, like, I wonder if they're maybe just, like, the other, like, wives in the harem. Because, like, they wouldn't be genetically related to, you know. And, like, there wasn't any record of what happened to T, the wife. Mm-hmm. There's no record of what her punishment was or what happened to her. And another thing that was like ordered is that like after these people were killed is like their names basically be like altered in the records, and like if their names were on any monuments they'd be like erased from the monuments, so that they were like essentially erased from history.
It's a good punishment.
It is a good punishment. But so like what is so strange and like why I thought this made such a good like unsolved mystery is that if this is Pentower, that's his name, why he was mummified, if he was a convicted traitor of who like tried to kill his father, the Pharaoh, if that is the case, why go to the trouble of mummifying him at all and then do it improperly? And then who did it? Like, who mummified him and did it wrong and put the goat skin in there? And
I wonder if it was like a law that all royal and like immediate family members of the royals had to be mummified. Like,
I don't know.
Like, we have to mummify you because that is the law. But we're also going to prevent you from having an afterlife.
But out of spite.
I feel like the people who had the real power in ancient Egypt were the embalmers.
The embalmers, yeah. Yeah.
They controlled your life. They might not have any power in your current life and any control, but they controlled your entire afterlife.
That's true. But I feel like that article would have mentioned like if there was a law, because the whole reason that this is still such like a hotly debated topic is like,
well, it could just also be more punishment along the lines of like erasing them from history, you know, erasing from the monument or changing in the records and everything. This could have just been another big FU to him because like, oh, we're going to do it, but we're not going to do it right.
Yeah.
We're going to intentionally do a poor job of it and intentionally, like, so you're still getting mummified because you're still, quote, important, but you suck. So
I wonder if someone if not priests did it. Like, I wonder if someone who like knew him and cared about him and like didn't want to see his body just like discarded, like found it before it could be discarded and took it and like kind of did like a home job of it.
Yeah. And
then maybe put it in its own tomb.
I mean, T was able to get such a large support for her plan that like, you know, it got too big and crumbled because of that. So like obviously there was a lot of people that probably could have worked together to be like, okay, no, like we got his body out, let's mummify and embalm and whatnot to the best of our ability, and like, oh, we know, you know, so and so is on the tomb filling team. We'll get him to sneak in. Yeah. So it's in a tomb. Yeah. So he probably was just in somebody else's tomb. Yeah. It got snuck in there, and that's how he probably ended up in the same cache, is because whenever that tomb was emptied.
Yeah. That would be... oh, man. I wish we could go back and figure it out.
So often I want to go back in time and like literally just be an observer.
Yeah.
So that's actually my view/wish for the afterlife is when I die, I would like my afterlife to be a movie theater.
Ooh.
With endless popcorn and snacks and never needing to do a bathroom break.
Yep.
But basically I could go back and literally watch any moment in history of anyone's life, mine or otherwise, and watch and actually see what it looked like. Like, I could just watch all of time.
I would love that.
And I would love to be able to watch, you know, someone's life from their viewpoint and then go watch someone else's life.
Yeah.
You know, for like, it's like, I'll watch your life from your viewpoint and then I'll go watch your life from Jarek's viewpoint or something.
Yeah. I think that would be super cool.
That's what I want the afterlife to be.
Yeah. I also have another request concerning my death.
Oh, yeah?
Besides the pants thing. Don't let anyone mummify my body. Because mummies are terrifying. And they don't look anything like your former self. I really went... I didn't really go through and look... First of all, I encourage everyone to look through the show notes on this one. Specifically this magazine article, because it's on archive.org, my favorite site, where you can read the whole thing. I literally thought about getting a subscription to this magazine because I was like, it's so cool. And it's all about mummies. I don't know if all the articles or if all the issues are like that, but this one is all about mummies. And every article was so cool. It wasn't even the article, like, it wasn't even the topic I was trying. I don't even know what the topic I was looking for was. But it wasn't this, and I found this, and I was like, I'm doing this one. But I was looking up, when I was looking at the Deir el-Bahari Wikipedia page and just looking at all of the mummies that they found, they have pictures of all of them. Not a single one of those looks like a human being. And just knowing that, like, the goal of mummification is to preserve your body. It doesn't do that. It doesn't do that. I mean, some of them do, because also I got a little deep into, like, cool mummies that do still look a lot like
bog mummies.
Yeah, like, and those are really creepy, and I do want to cover those sometime. But in general, regular mummies are terrifying a little bit, and scary to me just in the sense of knowing what they were trying to do and knowing that it didn't work. Don't burn, I don't know, burn my body. And my pants. Yeah. Burn my body and my pants. Anyways.
Well, anyone who wants to see the pictures of these mummies can check out our Facebook and Instagram at The Tales We Tell Podcast. If you want to see pictures but don't do the social media, check out our website at thetaleswetellpodcast.com. And if you want to support us, get yourself some sweet, sweet swag, you can check out our Redbubble store, redbubble.com. Search The Tales We Tell. We've got lots of different logos. You can put that on anything. Yeah. Always, you can become patrons at patreon.com/thetales-we-tell. And patrons get early access, commercial-free listening, free stickers, sometimes some bonus content. And as always, our undying love and affection.
As always.
I mean, all listeners get that too. Let's be real.
Yeah, that's true. But patrons get it just just a little tiny bit more.
Patrons allow us to do this.
That is true. And thank you guys again for sticking with us. And also, I don't say this enough, but episode suggestions are always welcome and appreciated. And also, I do want to let everyone know that the suggestions that you have given me are in a list, and they will be happening. I
in the pipeline.
Yeah, they're coming down the pipeline. I haven't forgotten about them. I try to space out things and not do 10 serial killers in a row, because we get a little bogged down by that. Anyways, we will see you guys next week. Thank you. Bye.
This mummy's going home.